Teachers, and you're listening to Show X Live with Ken in a student accommodation all the way to Scotland, and Wayne in his white windowless van? Uh-oh, I better get out of here. Enjoy the show!
Hello, everybody! Oh, I need to start and stop my streams again. Yeah, that's right. This takes all... It's the whole leaving the virtual audio cables on too long, and it only affects us, but that way we can sound normal again. So, anyhow, as I was saying, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Show X on VtW Productions.com on today, the 10th of May, 2015, and for those of us here in the United States, a happy Mother's Day. And so we are kicking things off right away, so we have so much to talk about today, as we are joined, as always, by our good friend Ken, but we are also joined by a special guest today, good friend, old caster that you should all remember and know, Mr. Natural 20. How are you doing today, sir?
It is an absolute pleasure to be here. It's been 2 years or so since I was last on VtW.
Oh, jeez. That's crazy.
It has been
absolute madness.
Let's say that has been so long, so long.
It's been too long, really, but I blame my job. What I did is I decided to sell my soul to a giant corporate overlord, and then they made me do lots of work, so I didn't have time to do anything apart from that.
We've all done that mistake once.
No, I was going to say, it is amazing how life kicks in and kind of takes over, but that's just us having to play adult, unfortunately.
It is very different to being the carefree student I once was, where I didn't have to do anything most of the day. and now it's like, oh god, I've got to wake up and, get into work before 9. Because, crazy partner is here and they're really annoyed at me for no good reason.
You know what's really strange, though, about this whole thing? Now, I have this sort of cognitive dissonance whenever I met Wayne, for the first time in real life, right? Because you meet the guy and you're like, whoa, I've seen you on webcam a bunch of times, but now seeing you in real life's really strange. I'm having a step back kind of moment here, because I've never really seen your face. So the voice I know really well. I know that voice so well, because I've listened to all your shows back in the day. So hearing and seeing you talk is like...
It's kind of a surreal moment, right? Because it's the same thing. It's the same thing. We've got very used to hearing each other talk on all of our shows and be guests and things like that over the years. And it's amazing that now, for us on VtW, Show X, we're the ones who started pushing, you know what? I think we could do this video thing. Who knows? People might actually want to see what we look like. Scary thought. But in doing so, it's now opened that up, where it's kind of like, wow, so we are real people.
So... I don't think anybody on VtW will have seen my face until today. No, there's nobody who would have ever seen my face apart from Yorkshire T, who I was in the studio with when I was doing any of my recording. And, was my best friend from, the age of 10, so I guess he probably should have seen my face by that point.
Totally starstruck.
No, I'm told that there is a massive dissonance between what I look like and how I actually sound, according to most people.
Well,
I was expecting a top hat and a monocle, first of all. And, of course, a big cup of Yorkshire tea.
The funny part is I don't actually drink tea. Yorkshire tea is the only one that does it.
Oh, that's funny.
And he gets very, very angry at me, though. The fact that I don't have any point. Yeah. He came over to my new flat recently, and we don't... my flatmate and I both drink tons of coffee, so we've got a really nice coffee machine. Okay. Everything's set up perfectly. Tea comes along, do you have any tea bags or anything? I'm like, no, we don't drink any of that here. Yeah, he had a good shout at me for about half an hour about why I should always have tea in the house, regardless of what it is.
What if the Queen comes to visit? You have to have tea on hand.
If the Queen comes to South Woodford, I would firstly question what I'd done wrong, and then secondly question what her sanity is like.
Well, yeah, that usually means you're either going to get knighted or executed, so I'd probably be worried too, yeah.
It'd be pretty awesome to be knighted, but I don't think that's going to happen for quite a while.
So, you were at university before during the show, right? That's what you were doing, you were at uni?
Yep. I was doing my master's degree at the time.
Okay. So are you a comp sci guy like us, or are you?
No, I'm an economics student.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I then went on to basically a finance-y type job afterwards, and I've been there for 3 years. That means that the most boring thing in the world, right? I'm going to be a fully qualified accountant in September of this year.
Oh wow!
Which is going to
cool.
like. It sounds like the most boring thing ever, and often it is. But
Are you kidding? I am riveted. Accounting, you say? Like numbers and money and things? No, you say that, but I am actually very, very thankful for people that have an interest in doing accounting, because it is something that I absolutely have no desire to get into. And so I need people that have that kind of love of numbers and money and finances and stuff, that they can take care of that for me. And there's people we can trust with that. So I can worry about the things I like. So I'm a big fan.
I wouldn't go as far to say as you can trust me with your finances, but I'll do a better job than most. And in reality, like, I'm going to get this, and then I'm probably switching my roles pretty significantly to something else. Just because I've worked 3 years, got this magical thing that goes, you aren't terrible at what you do, and that means that people like to employ you. So I'm actually looking to get into tech sector work somewhere, because that at least combines what I normally do in my spare time with actually like what I actually know from my qualifications and stuff. Yeah, so with a little luck, I will go there, and then I'll actually have a lot more free time on my hands, because I won't have to work giant amounts of overtime.
That's good.
That would be very nice.
Well, no, so I'm looking forward to it, because obviously I've got a bunch of... So, you know, if you've been sat there 2.5 years, not really being able to do very much apart from, you know, go to work, relax afterwards, not have anything, like, creative. I've got a couple ideas in my head about what I want to do, that I promise will be better than the last thing that I did. So I tried to do, 2 years ago, the daily... news thing for gaming, and I didn't have any idea how video editing worked in any meaningful way.
It's the little things.
It was great.
Like sample text appear up here randomly, and
exactly
random word art up here.
It was great for, you know, a year or two. So it was great for a couple of weeks, and then I realized I was spending about 3 hours each day making enough content for like a 5-minute long video, and I was like, I don't think this is very effective for the amount of time I'm spending.
That is a challenge to try to turn it into where you... Well, it's part of it is you have to get used to it enough to get that workflow so that you can reduce the amount of time it actually takes to create something. Yeah. I mean, we cheated. We just said, you know what, let's just take our podcast that we do for, 2 hours every Sunday and just put it on video, and we won't care because it's live, and so if we screw up, hey, no editing involved. So yeah, it makes it a little easier for us. We cheated a lot.
Yeah, I think you find anything scripted in general is more difficult, because then you have the capability. There's like actual scope for you to be able to mess up. When it's just free and open, messing up is the content. People enjoy that.
Yeah, so like that was the beauty of doing the show itself. We'd screw up all the time, but it was just part of the fun of actually doing the radio show in general. So now what I'm looking to do maybe is, if I get enough free time after work, set up something where I do like a single review every single week of one game.
Okay.
No, because I've been looking at video reviewing in general across most of the big critical platforms of gaming, and I get really frustrated by it, because it's literally them just reading out the written review with clips of the game playing in the background. And I just don't think that's an effective use of the format as a whole. It doesn't make much sense to me to use it that way, since you can very easily, using video, demonstrate stuff about the gameplay itself, which like would be very illustrative for somebody playing a game, right? Mm-hmm. Now, as it turns out, I think the reason that happens is because it's not very cost effective if you're trying to make profit as a company to do that, right? You'd spend ages on a single video, and then maybe you get a few hits for it, but you've got, maybe 5 or 6 games to review every single week if you're a reviewer of some sort. You've got to get through
It's
all
a
of them at the
challenge.
same
I mean,
time.
I get more review codes in and like offers where it says we'll happily provide you a Steam codes than I have time to look at. And I keep
Yeah.
trying to get the community, or well, find people who'd be willing to take some of this on themselves, because it'd be great to have more content. And who doesn't want free video games, right?
Exactly.
And so it's kind of like, why is this so difficult? But for me, it's kind of I don't have time. And so I need others to show interest in wanting to actually do the time to do it right and produce a good video, not just something where it's like, hey, I played the game and yay, cool. I need someone that's really going to commit to it. And so, hey, Nat, how's it going? So you're saying video games?
No, so it is something that hopefully in September or so, if I get more free time, I'll be asking you guys, being like, guys, I want to do this thing. If it's not terrible, can you let me come back? But it's going to need a lot of work. I need to understand how video editing works a lot better than I already do. Because I can slice things together and I can, deal with audio. Audio is never going to be a problem for me just because of the amount of stuff that I've had to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, like, obsessively looking at strings in Audacity. I mean, like, is that sound right? Maybe. I don't know. Let's just cut it anyway and see how it works. So that's fine, but the video editing aspect is going to be a huge deal.
Well, if you need any help, I am a Windows Movie Maker master. I can trim and add visual effects when there's a marquee. Yeah,
Ken's
and,
really good at
diamonds
the
coming out.
Ken's really good at the blends.
Pro.
Now, the nice thing is around the community, we do have some very talented people. In fact, our friend Tom Bad Guy has been doing more and more with video. If you check out on the front page of VtW Productions, he's been doing a lot of Let's Play type of videos, or him going through different games. And so you get to see some of his editing skills as he's been learning how to do things with video and streaming and stuff like that. And so we do have some people that understand it if ever there are questions. But yeah, I think that wouldn't be a problem at all to get you back on board.
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
Oh, it's really awesome, and on top of, so what I figured I might do ahead of that is hopefully, with the way my work goes, we get pretty quiet from around June through till September. So around then I was thinking maybe I do a small Let's Play of a game first and then learn a bit of stuff doing that before moving on to something much more, serious or difficult, as the case may be. I was thinking Dungeon Keeper 2 because I haven't seen one in the LP archive that's actually completed, and it's an awesome game that is just genuinely a bunch of fun to play. If only because the voice acting is some of the best I've heard still now, and it's 15 years on?
I was going to say, it has been a while, but that is such a great game. One of those little classics.
It was the first PC game I played Normality once.
Okay.
And I barely remember any of that because I must have been 7 or 8 when I played that game, and it's one of the most confusing point-and-click adventures I've ever seen. But moving on, I then played Dungeon Keeper as the second ever PC game I ever played in my life. And I was admittedly completely terrible at it. I had no idea what was going on most of the time. I got stuck at a point in the game, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I quit. Came back about 3 years later, stormed through this entire thing. I'm just like, how was I so bad? How was I so stupid?
I'm pretty sure there's a psychological term for that, by the way. When you have a creative or even a logical block, there's something you just can't quite understand, then you come back to it sometime later and it just clicks really easily. I had the exact same experience with Orphan for PlayStation 2. I got stuck on a random boss for a week, and as a kid that irritated the hell out of me, and I just said nope, no more, done, trying other games, forgot about it for 2 years, came back, exact same thing, just stormed through the whole thing, no problem, easy peasy now.
I honestly believe our minds continue to work on whatever the problem is, and then at some point when it figures it out and we go back to it, it's well, that was nothing. I have no idea why I was making this so difficult for myself.
So the one game I found that's an exception to that for me is the original Baldur's Gate. I've kept on, every so often I'll come back and be like, no, I know more about how gaming works now. I know more about how the system works. I'm better at controlling everything. This time I'll be able to do it. And I get to the mines with the cobbles and I just die over and over again. I'm like, all right, no, no, I can't do it.
See, I was gonna say
because that game
tried
is punishing.
Yeah, and
Like,
I never beat original Baldur's Gate. I don't even remember where I failed at it at some point, but now granted, I'm not the best person to kind of comment on anything when it comes to beating and completing games because I have too many to ever spend time on, let alone finish. But it's just one of those where I look back and I remember it was a great game. Loved it. Depth. So much cool gameplay. And I don't think I even scratched the surface of it.
No, like, so I used to be great about finishing every game I got, and then, I got a job, and then I became really terrible about it, because now I have, like, it's literally the reversal of the entire problem. You have a world where, you don't have very much money, but you've got plenty of time on your hands to do things. You buy this one game, beat everything in it as much as possible, and then move on to the next one. Whereas, you get a job and the problem completely switches around. It's like, I've got enough money to buy these things now. That's not a problem anymore. It's just, I don't get time to play an 80-hour RPG.
Yeah.
No, so I was really excited, for example, about Pillars of Eternity.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I actually got that myself as well, funnily enough. In the past week, yeah. So,
looking at it, I have played 30 hours on this game. Haven't beaten it yet. And, I played it a lot, as much as I could within the first week or so, but then just ran out of time. I had a couple of days where I haven't played this game and had no idea where I was in the plot anymore. And I'm like, past me would have hated that. Past me would be like, what are you doing? Finish the game. It's good. And it's disappointing because it's a really, really good game, I can tell. But I'm now at a point in the story where I'm so deep in and forgotten enough about it that a lot of the stuff seems really dissonant for no good reason, other than I've forgotten things. It's really sad. Now, maybe when I get, some holiday time or something, I'll get back into it, try and beat the entire thing from start to finish. But until then, it's going to sit on the back burner, taunting me with 30 hours of my life.
I'm glad to hear that you got your creative work still planned, and you're not just giving up to corporate life. The comment I made earlier about how we all have our stints in corporate life was because I recently left my job with Hewlett-Packard, as I keep saying, because I can't say their name on air, of course. So Hewlett-Packard.
Of course.
So I finished with them a couple weeks ago, so I know the feeling of having a bit more freedom. But I'm back in the student life now.
Okay.
It's an advanced level of student life. I do have a bit more luxuries, but I say as I'm broadcasting from my own office here, which is nice. But I feel you with the lack of time. Oh man, I don't have any excuse. Even the show, like I stopped looking at this kind of stuff here in order to do the show. Like I was already here. I'm going to be here afterwards, and it's a Sunday. Just so happened to be here. So yeah, I feel you. I feel you there.
It's amazing how time becomes like our most precious resource. Of everything else, it's always time, and people are constantly beating on me to say like, hey, let's go do this, or you should do this. And even now during the show, certain friends of mine, El Campo, are commenting about, so as soon as the show's done, you're coming out drinking, right? I'm like, I've got things to do. I have to finish
And
cosplay
plus-
stuff and things, darn it. So
And
yes.
plus, Mr. Wayne is already a little bit dehydrated today, let's say.
What are you talking about? I just didn't sleep enough. We can talk about that later.
So another quick thing that I noted down to ask you, actually, as a side note there, Nat, you mentioned some of the games you've been playing was Dungeon Keeper 2. Have you picked up the new dungeons, and did you enjoy it if you have?
Oh, the new Dungeon Keeper, the mobile.
No, they're actual dungeons. It's actually just called Dungeons.
I have not. I've not even heard about that. I don't know how I missed it.
I'll put it in the IRC so you can have a quick glance at a link there. Yeah, it's kind of like a direct continue-on for that sort of gameplay, but it's much more modern graphics. It's a new game, obviously. 2011 it was released. It did really well with normal critics, but users tend to say no thank you. So Metacritic was 65 out of 100, but I was just curious if you'd seen it or not, because I picked it up and I had the same thing as the users. I played it for 15 minutes and thought, nope, I don't know what it is. I just can't play this game. I'm just not enjoying it.
No, it completely ran past me. I haven't even heard about that until today, so I might check it out.
It's just that kind of line of game you may enjoy that is all, because I know I personally didn't.
No, I was mainly playing Dungeon Keeper because, or thinking about LPing it because it's just a game I'm incredibly familiar with, and it's on PC, so I don't have to worry about all the issues of linking through a console through to the PC and then footage like that. Because I've got I've got a Wii U as well, and it's sat there next to me. I'm looking at it right now.
Don't worry, it does that
That's
for most people.
interesting.
And say that most people let it sit there, it collects dust, and they realize
that's exactly what I was
Nintendo
gonna go
really
on to.
needs to
Do you
stop
use it at
making
all?
like full consoles and just focus on the handheld games.
Yeah.
I honestly don't. So it sits there collecting dust mainly because I have no reason to move it. But no, because they've got the gamepad's pretty useful actually for most of the stuff. So it means that you can play your console from bed if you need to, which is pretty cool. But I've been playing a lot of the Mario Kart recently, and I realized because Nintendo released that maybe last year, and they released a bunch of DLC very recently. Including 200cc, which is a mode which basically makes it as fast as an F-Zero game.
Yeah, I heard that little bit where people were saying that thing was ridiculous. Like how fast you move.
Yeah, so Mario Kart has trained people never to use a brake because you don't need it ever.
Yes.
Until you get to 200cc, at which point the game is so fast that you have to learn how to, and so there's this contingent of players who've never seen this game mode before, never used brake in any sort of racing game ever. They're just sitting there going, what the hell has just happened to this Mario Kart game? So I got this DLC, and the same thing happened to me. I'm just like, what? I have to use a brake. Got it figured out pretty quickly. And all the carts have different statistics and everything like that, and I'm nerdy enough that I have a spreadsheet that solves like what the best cart is. I can't believe I did that. I got bored one day at work, and I was like, "Well,
don't say that." I know a surprising number of people, especially those are like engineers around me and such, that make spreadsheets for pretty much everything. And so when I hear that, I just chuckle because I have a friend at work who has a spreadsheet for like every car that comes out in reality, like in comparison to say which are the best, including formulas for ratios of what makes a car better than another. Down to friends who like document every aspect of our training in life and stuff like that, where people that are researching, and so because they're researching, they make spreadsheets to keep it all organized, and they share it sometimes. I'm like, God, geez, wow, you put a lot into that. So
And
don't
for
feel
those in the
bad.
IRC, there's my coffee spreadsheet.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that, you can check out. Ken has done the same thing when it comes to his office back at his old evil conglomerate that had all of his mates focused on what kinds of coffee they drank. And
oh, that's amazing."
And we had a good few interesting formulas, graphs. If you click on the world map of coffee, it'll eventually populate and show the different countries all the coffee's been from and so on. Not sad.
So I made the spreadsheet of Mario Kart, got everything figured out within a couple of days, went online and destroyed everybody, and this is the first time I've ever played an online game where I'm actually just better than most people at it. It's
nice.
Bizarre to me, right? Because usually I'm just terrible. I've got no idea what's going on.
Yep.
Apart from that one time I got the new Modern Warfare game, Advanced Warfare, and I figured out that game as well using a spreadsheet, and I was like, oh, this is really easy.
Nice.
Turns out you don't need to know anything about shooting as long as you get the right set of guns and you can kill everybody. Same situation here. I figured out the best cart and I can beat everybody because of it. And then I realized I'd ruined the game for myself because it wasn't a challenge to win anymore. So I'm like, oh no. So this is the one game that's been getting mileage out of me on my Wii U for ages. And now I've ruined it because I can now win online without any trouble. And it's the worst thing in the world.
So you just got to find some kind of competitive thing where you're going against other people that have figured out kind of the gates of how to do well at it, and maybe you'll have competition again.
Yeah, you walk in there with a big smile on your face because you've got a spreadsheet and they show you their database.
Well, then you know you've arrived.
Yeah, if Nintendo's matchmaking was better for that, then that might happen, but it's not going to. I tried to pick up Mortal Kombat because of that as well, and MK10 is a great game that's really fun. It's just terrible on PC because they ported it awfully. So yeah, I need a competitive game again, and I don't know what to play. I'm trying to find that niche. Because I mean, like, you can always play a game of Dota or like League of Legends or something, but it's like for that the trench is always there, and so no matter how good you get, there's always somebody who's a bit better than you.
Especially when there's like 42 million players last time I checked. Yeah, there's got to be somebody better than you.
There are a lot of people better than me in those games. A lot. I wouldn't describe myself as good at either of them.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah. Just because of how savagely people destroy me every so often.
Now those are games that can definitely add a bit of hurt to your experience, depending on how you play. And I found that especially with Dota. But that's why you go play Heroes of the Storm. It takes away all of that negativity because, you know, everybody levels together. Everybody gets a prize.
I've actually got an invite to the Heroes of the Storm beta, as far as I remember. But what put me off was the entire like leveling up system. So, generally speaking, I like a game. If you get a game, I want everybody to be competitive without significant input from them, because so their skills should be what determine what makes them good or bad, not how far they leveled up or something like that. So when I played League, one of my frustrations was, well, I'm good, but I don't have the optimal build, and to get that, I have to either spend lots of my own money to get it, or play the game an absolute ton, even though I might be significantly better than other people or whatever. I don't think I am, but that was my frustration with it. I think the reason I prefer Dota over League at the moment is because nothing you pay for in Dota affects like your competitive like how competitive you are. The only thing it does affect is cosmetic things, and that's okay. I don't mind that. So yeah, I thought about playing Heroes of the Storm, and then I realized that just because of the way I am, I get frustrated with it eventually. It's the same reason, for example, in Hearthstone, I only play Arena.
Okay. Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah. So, Hearthstone, obviously, for Constructed, you need lots of resources and cards and things like that to make the best deck.
Yeah,
and then
to have anything that's competitive.
Yeah.
Are you going to tell us that you're the guy who spent $3,000 or whatever it was this week on Hearthstone decks within 5 minutes?
Oh, God.
Really? Somebody did that?
I'll find the article. It's pretty good.
That's incredible.
Jeez. That's scary.
So there are some people who can do that because they know that they're good enough that they'll earn their money back from playing in tournaments or something. So a lot of the like very old, like very good Magic players, for example, Magic the Gathering, will spend ridiculous sums of money whenever a new set comes out, confident that they'll just earn the money back from winning tournaments over and over again. No, for me, I don't spend anything on Hearthstone at all.
That's good.
Or at least I spent a little bit when I first started playing Arena. But now I'm usually good enough at Hearthstone Arena that I never have to spend any money, because you spend 150 coins to enter. And as long as you get 7 wins, you always get a refund. So it's just about... And since the playing field for Arena is artificially even, since you just get a random set of cards, and you have to put them together into a deck.
So you need a 70% win rate then, 7 out of 10, theoretically. That's pretty difficult, considering I struggle to get 1 out of, like, 3.
It's hard. But usually like I don't hit 7 out of 10 every single time. I'm not nearly that good. Like most pro players aren't even good enough to do that a lot of the time. But I am usually good enough that in combination with the quests that you get and everything else, I have just enough to keep myself going.
I found the article, by the way. Here it is. Gamer spends $3,200 on Hearthstone packs in one night. In-game purchases for games like League of Legends, Dota 2, Team Fortress, and Hearthstone, this is from ubergizmo.com, by the way, will eventually add up over time, and you could end up spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on items that you may or may not eventually regret. However, that seems to... the one person spent $3,200 in a single night. Hearthstone, for those familiar, is a game, yada, yada, yada. Yep, he said, let's say I've spent $5,000 on this game in total. I've received 1,000 hours of entertainment from it. That's only $5 an hour of entertainment. I'll spend $60 on a game that I play for 15 minutes and never touch again. Spend the money on what you enjoy. My best friend spends $20K on his motorbike hobby, and that lasted only 1 year. Is there really any difference? So, when you put it that way, it's not that bad of a spending, I guess, if he puts in enough hours. But I actually watched the video where he was interviewed, and the guy, one, he's really well off. He's in finance and economics, like somebody we know, so he's got some money to spare. And he was also saying how he already had all the cards, but he wanted all the gold ones. So that's why he spent the money.
You can't be serious.
Because you don't need to spend that much money for all the cards. You need to spend that much money for all the gold cards.
Hey, as long as he is getting something he enjoys out of it, right?
You seem to be.
I can't
maybe
judge that.
Well, the thing is, you could always say, like, that's the thing with anything that's that can be seen as a luxury, right? You can always say, well, you could have given it to the children in Africa. You know, you can always say that with anything in life, though. I mean, I spent £1.50 on some, like, iced tea earlier. I could have had water. I could have had water and sent that money to Africa. But I didn't.
Yeah, I see. That goes back to the... No, I won't say that on the show.
Yeah, never mind. This is not an episode of Your Opinion is Wrong, sir.
I'll leave that alone.
So you can say that, and people can spend whatever they want on any money, but it's just like, you have all the cards, mate. You're just making them gold. It doesn't do anything.
That's the thing. He's
that cosmetic
not even truly
piece
collecting them. He's not even truly collecting them. They're not physical. He can already go look them up online and see them. Like, there's no difference.
Oh,
I mean,
yikes.
Like, your deck will look really nice when your opponent's playing against them. They'll be like, oh, that's really nice. Well, the cards are gold. Isn't that great? But I think the level of impact that has compared to, like, the amount of money you spent is probably low enough that I'm like, really? Because I know some people have spent, £3,000 on a handbag or something. I'll be like,
yeah.
Okay, fair enough, but I don't think... I think there are reasonable circles under which somebody might be judged for the kind of handbag that they wear. I don't think very many people are going to judge you by the number of gold Hearthstone cards you have.
Well, they may judge you. They just may judge you differently.
Yeah. And to be fair, if one of the listeners called in during our Geek Cred section and said, this week I collected every single card in Hearthstone in gold, we'd probably be like, yeah, you win. You win the Geek Rewards, all of the Geek Rewards.
Now, if they'd managed to do that through just, like, sheer dogged perseverance at Hearthstone and managed to do it somehow like that, I'd be like, well played. But it's
different to be well played than it is to be well spent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty proud of my deck. My dick, as our Australian friends always say, my dick. Because I work hard. I've put in probably like 100 hours in Hearthstone. I've got a bunch of legendaries I'm quite proud of, a couple of which are gold. And I gotta say, when I play those, I'm like, look at that bad boy. Look at my golden hogger. Aren't you impressed? Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
But I don't think I'd be feeling the same pride if every single card I played, like, oh, here's my Murloc, it's gold. Here's my other Murloc, it's also gold. Gold Shire Fitman, it's a gold. Gets to a point where it's just a bit excessive. I think it takes away the specialness of everything is gold.
But at the same time, with this one as example, I mean, you ran into a key point there where you say when someone's well off, one of the things they often do is, because for them, usually time is much more critical. They usually have very little of it because they're spending so much time making money, that it's worthwhile for them to go ahead and just buy the things that they don't have time to earn themselves so that they can go ahead and enjoy it. And that's what we used to talk about when people used to buy, leveled tunes and things like World of Warcraft and such. When you buy a full 60 back in the day or something, but a completely tweaked tune, is because people were paying for the experience so they could start playing this higher level content without having the time to actually put forth to learn it. And the plus and minuses of all that, right? Because then you have people have overinflated accounts without the ability to back it up. But
So I never objected to paying for a 60 or something so much. just because I'm like, well, okay, you don't have time to level, but I don't think it changes very much of the end game, other than you know less about what your class does. Obviously,
That's true.
Yeah. Time. So I mean, if your raid leader is willing to go, fair enough. They know a little bit less, but I'm sure they'll learn over time. It doesn't change anything. I think it would be different if somebody was paying somebody to play on that character and kill bosses for them, because then
That
I'm
would
like,
be
well,
wrong. That would be bad. Yeah. No, I think I just think you get it when that it's like, okay, it's only a challenge as if someone artificially thinks that because like if you're pugging it or something like that, and so nobody knows that you have no idea what you're doing, and they have an expectation that you should be able to perform because you're that level. Then that's where I'm kind of like, aye. But again, that's okay for me. If you've got the resources to spend your money and that's how you're going to enjoy it, that's fine. Do what you do.
That's the thing about our capitalist society. We think it's okay to be so wasteful so long as you've earned it in one way or another. I mean, truthfully, and I'm going to take this show into a slightly your opinion is wrong sort of direction here. Truthfully, it is quite unethical. I mean, think of the good he could do in his own hometown for his family and so much else with that money, right? Like, I can see why people would judge that and say, "What are you doing?" Like that's excessive. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying that some people would say that. That's all. That's all.
I can see the argument.
I believe if you earn it, you spend it how you want.
I can see the argument.
true.
I can see how it ends. And I can see that it's ultimately an argument that's untenable because obviously of what you said earlier, right? I spent some money on a pint last night. I could have sent that somewhere to Africa, and that would have been better spent.
And they could have a pint.
They could have a pint. So the point is that is objectively a better way to spend the money, as far as I can tell. But it would be such. Well, I think it's actually unjustifiable that we do that, but I think that ultimately, like,
I agree.
that would just lead to madness as well. So I can't do that.
I totally agree. That again, it's difficult to talk about this because it gets to a point. Well, technically, we should be living in like 20-person to a bedroom place, so we could send all of our money that we possibly have spare elsewhere, and so on and so forth. But we don't because we're all selfish. That's okay.
I've got to get out of jail
That's
free
okay.
card with that, which is America. So
That's true.
I
We don't
have
have
to do any of that hippie crap because America.
But and an abrupt change of topic here. In Britain this week, we've had some interesting news, and I would like to
Hey, how
hear-
go them votes there, Ken?
Yeah, so yeah, our whole government's been turned head on toe this week in some of the countries within the UK anyway. So first of all, I don't want to. Of course, you're welcome not to say anything here if you don't want to, sir. But what did you vote? Nah, if you're willing to say, what did you vote for?
So this is going to be a really
Conservative.
complicated... No. I didn't vote for Conservatives, I promise. This is going to be a really complicated answer. Because I didn't vote. But for reasons as opposed to not like being asked. So my seat at the moment is Ian Duncan Smith's seat. He is the Work and Pensions Secretary, as far as I can tell, in the UK. And it's about a 10,000 Conservative majority. And has never been taken by any other political party. It's impossible for them to lose. Like nigh on like act of God, like they'd still
My
win.
hometown was like that with Labour, believe it or not, until this week.
We'll talk about that in a second because I'm definitely interested in a perspective that isn't my outraged Facebook wall.
I did actually see that. I think. Yep.
So, broadly speaking, I'm like, well, okay, so my vote has limited impact because even if I voted against the Conservatives, they're still winning the seat. There's nothing that can be done. But I think the bigger problem is this. For us in, like, for me, I am rightward leaning in terms of, like, how you tax and spend and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm very, very leftward leaning when it comes to any sort of social policy. So, broadly speaking, I think that, you know, like, we should champion gay rights as much as you can. You should do as much to help, like, immigrant families in the country as you can as well, right? So, for me, there's a dilemma in that I think that there are a lot of really, really problematic Tory policy, conservative policies, regarding things like immigration, for example, which to me even if they themselves aren't racist, are often there to pander to opinions that I believe to be racist. So I'm like, I can't.
Very well put. Yep.
So like, it isn't racist to say there should be limits on immigration to the country, but it is ridiculous when those limits placed on people are at 100,000 immigrants every single year, which is one, completely impossible practically, and two, even were it possible, would ban the very smartest and best people from coming over here. And to me, that's an illogical policy that's founded in fear of people as opposed to being founded in like good policy. So I'm like, I can't vote Tory because I think it's unjust.
So before we continue, I want to see why you look so disgruntled, Mr. Wayne.
No, not disgruntled.
Why do you think
interested.
100,000 is unattainable?
Well, no, so I'm not sure what that means by unattainable or if it's untenable, in the sense that, is there a limit to 100,000 and it should be higher? Or is it you have to hit 100,000 before something else happens? Because I don't know, right? Being American, I don't know what the side of the politics is. And I actually am curious about the discussion because I've been talking with Stoner, the mighty Stoner, in TeamSpeak over the last week or two with the elections going on, trying to understand what your guys' politics is like. Because, when people always are querying us here in America about how ours seems so crazy at times, but I find a lot of it very similar between our countries. And so in there, I was very curious to hear about the different parties and kind of how that was playing through, because I got an impression, and you hear these things from people as they talk about different parties, because unfortunately, my argument is no party is ever perfect. No one's ever saying the right thing across the board. Much like you're saying, Nat, there's levels where in some areas you feel towards the way one party tends to lean, in other areas there's something that you believe another way. And so you never have someone that represents like exactly your views, and that's always a challenge. You have to kind of focus on what's your hot topics or what are the things you most are concerned with and kind of put your vote more that direction. So when talking to Stoner, I was hearing things where it was like between conservative and essentially the liberal party or whatever
So there's unlike the US, I know it's confusing to have more than two. But
you guys claim to have more than two, and yet you have two.
We do. They just have coalitions in the end. But so the main contenders in the past have always been Labour and Conservative.
There you go,
Labour
Labour,
and
the
Tory,
other
as we
one.
say.
Yeah.
Then we have the Liberal Democrats, who in the recent years were doing really well. They're also left-wing. They were doing quite well until they allied with the Conservatives, which is kind of a cross, right? You go from left to right, so obviously people were upset, and this year they did really poorly, many would say for that reason, because they kind of betrayed people that voted for them. Then we have UKIP, United Kingdom Independence Party, who believe we should not be part of the EU whatsoever. We should cut down immigration, often known as the racist party. Now, they do have some good policies, as any party in the world does, even the monster raving loony party, who, by the way, are a joke party, actually have some good policies. However, there are many, many questionable ones as well, to put that in a minor tense. Then we have the SNP, also the last one I'll mention. Actually, second last. SNP are Scottish Nationalist Party. They are pro-independence of Scotland, and it's interesting because we have... Sorry if I get too complex here. But in Scotland, we have our own little government as well. In the last couple of decades, basically, it's devolved issues, so we have some of our own things we can look after, such as education, with that government. But overall, human rights and tax and much else is left with the UK government rather than Scottish government.
Yeah.
So SNP have a majority in our own little government, and now they've got a lot of people in the British one, which is interesting because they're pro-Scotland, not pro-Britain, and now they're in British Parliament. So that has its own connotations. And last party I'm going to mention is the Green Party. You can kind of guess what they do. They have a lot of
They smoke a lot of weed. Hey, I'm in Colorado, right? Isn't that how it goes?
Is that what the Green Stoner
Party,
voted
right?
for then?
It's either they smoke a lot of weed or they really like money. Which?
Our money's not green, so...
Okay, so it's got to be weed.
But that's a summation of the most popular ones. There's also a bunch of individual candidates who don't stand with parties. And some of them have managed to get seats and they did well in their area. And there's some smaller parties, such as the Monster Raving Loony Party, who are genuinely just a party there to make fun of the government, who said things such as, "We'll paint the White Cliffs of Dover blue to match the sea," and other such great policies. But sorry, that was a bit of a derail. You were saying that originally.
Okay. So conservative policy favors the right wing and favors the idea of traditional English values as well. UKIP does the same thing, except more to the right than conservatives are. And they often tussle with each other over certain amounts of the vote as well. So, to me, a lot of conservative policy is quite smart. A lot of it is very, very, very stupid. And to me, the sticking point is the immigration policy, because if conservative immigration policy were in place when my parents moved to the country, they never would have been allowed in. And I think that that's wrong, and I can't bring myself to vote for that, because I think that if my parents weren't given that opportunity, I would have nothing like what I have now. I probably wouldn't even exist. So I can't vote for them. And then with Labour, I did vote for New Labour back in the prior elections. I think that Labour changed their policies a fair bit between the last election and this one. Partially because they thought that rejecting what they'd done previously would gain them more votes, but also because they felt that that was a lot of the reason they lost the election before this last one. I think that shift meant they moved to the left quite a lot, and then proposed a bunch of economic policies that are really bad, in my opinion.
Labour have been known to have interesting policies on economics anyway in the past. So,
Also, I was curious because one of the things I had heard was that the Labour Party, quote unquote, was very good for small businesses and students and things like that, where the conservative policies were much more for big business and wealthy people that already have money. And so, again, that was just one opinion I heard, not knowing the politics or the specific issues that you guys are going through.
So that can certainly be argued. I think that neither party is going to go, we want to benefit one group over the other, because it makes stupid, like, it would be political
that'd be
suicide
very poor
to do
policy,
either, right? So I think often Labour do come up with really, really smart policies. So they, for example, in 1997 were the guys who came up with a minimum wage in this country. Okay. And that, like, to me is a genuinely great policy that's helped a lot of people.
Definitely.
And didn't harm the economy nearly as much as people said it would. It just barely touched it. And they've done a bunch of good stuff, like integrating us with the EU to an extent that we get, like, better free trade and all of that. So that's good. The problem is that the shift leftwards that they made over the past 5 years meant they implemented, or like said they would implement, a bunch of policies that don't make any sense. So, for example, one is capping all energy costs in the country. Now, that's a great policy from like a populist stance, but if the price of oil goes up, it bankrupts the country incredibly quickly. And so, given that the two major political parties have a blend of ideals where if I took the best parts of both, I would have a party that I really want to vote for and really like, but both have levels of their policy which I find too bad to be able to vote for.
Gotcha.
So I was going to say, there's also an interesting thing that I think with Labour especially as well, is when one party says they're going to do something, the other party often thinks, well, we got to be contrary. If we say the same thing, it seems like we're stealing their policy, so we have to say the opposite now. So when Labour and Conservatives seem to be going against each other, I feel like that's kind of in itself pushed Labour more left-wing, because they're like, well, Conservatives are right-wing, so we got to go that way.
No, that's definitely true. And whether that was just a political decision or not is something that I can't tell. I can assume that that might be the case, but it's not something I can be sure about. And I like to try and vote for the policies that are proposed to us, as opposed to my impression of what somebody might be like.
Yeah.
Because that's just personality politics, and fair enough, some guy's cool. I don't know if he's actually a smart person or not. So at the end of the day, I was like, look, I have an objection to both parties in the political system. I also have an objection to the Lib Dems, because they openly went back on one of their biggest campaign promises in 2010. So, as Ken mentioned, the Liberal Democrats went into coalition with the Tories. Now, one of the biggest things that they said was they would fight rises in tuition fees for students to the absolute bitter end. And then they went with the Conservatives and said, we'll increase them. And then said that their policy had been completely unrealistic. This upset quite a lot of people who believe that you should be able to trust somebody's word. And a lot of their core vote just died because of it. Frankly, like, that is something I object to as well. I'm usually quite...
It makes you wonder whether that should be legally binding. The problem is, if a party says, oh, we're going to do this amazing thing, and then they go to office and they look at the numbers and they go, actually, that's really feasibly impossible and it'll bankrupt our country. And then they get held legally against it, sort of thing. So it's an interesting idea whether they should be accountable to these things.
No, it is actually, because the same thing happens here in the United States all the time, where we have politicians who go out there and just claim the world, right? They're just whatever's popular at the time for anybody in their base to want to hear. And I mean, this arguably happened with even our presidents, all of them, to the one we have now, where they get in there on these big claims of what they're going to do or not do. And the problem is, once you get into a seat of power or you're in that responsibility role, then reality kicks in. And you get to find out what the world's really like and what's really happening behind the scenes. And you get to figure out, oh, maybe I can't do that because, one, maybe it wouldn't be legal, or two, maybe, we're in such a position down the road that you can't turn it that quickly. And so you can try to do little changes, but you maybe can't fully succeed on those things that you are politicking on. And that's a challenge, right? Because you want people to tell you the truth. And it's one thing for them to come in there, I don't know, because would it solve it to say they're bound? Because now people might politic a little more accurately. They maybe wouldn't make as lofty of claims. Or is it just that it could never happen because no one knows all the facts? I don't know.
No,
sorry.
No, you go for it. Go.
Okay, cool.
No, you go.
Okay, so I think that ultimately the Lib Dems got annihilated in this election really badly. They lost 45 seats or something, which is more than 80% of their seats overall. They just died. I think it's sad because a lot of their policies are smart and they're a decent party a lot of the time. But I also think it's something that probably should have happened because that shows there is accountability of some sort in electoral politics and means that people will be more cautious over the claims that they make at the ballot box because they can just come back and bite them in 5 years. So yeah, that's what I think. I think that this system proved, at least to an extent, that people are held to account for once. And so I was quite happy to see that.
Yeah, they're held to account, but that's the thing. It is very minimal, like you said. It is just they're not going to do so good when the next election comes along. But they have office for the next 4 years, and I gotta say, if one crazy party gets in there, UKIP, they could easily do horrible, horrible things in those 4 years. Now, that's the next thing I want to bring up was. So I don't know what I did a little bit of politics. American politics when I was in high school, but I really did just touch on it. So, proportional representation. In the UK, our councils, I believe, are all voted in with a PR system. Our local councils for each town and the like, so that you vote for party members, then say if 35% of the votes go, say, Lib Dem, then 35% of the seats, or closest as we possibly can, go to the Lib Dems. And in a sense, that makes it's really fair. However, in our bigger election, we have the FPTP, first past the post. So if you have, which has happened in this case, millions of people can vote for, say, UKIP, and yet they got a minimal number of seats. A similar number of people have voted for SNP, and they have tens and tens and tens of seats. How is that fair? So, again, when you see the bare bones there, you can think, oh, that's horrible. But then you think, but it's stopped a racist party getting in, so is it that bad? Arguably racist, I should say. So, I'm curious on your thoughts, Nat. What do you think of PR? Even though, personally, I wouldn't want UKIP in power, of course. I don't want them to have any seats if I had my way. But I also, even more so, I believe in freedom. And I do believe that they should be if that many people vote for them, those people should be represented, really, shouldn't they?
So, broadly speaking, I think that PR is a good idea, especially compared to the system that we've got now. So I mentioned my seat is 10,000 majority, and it is just demoralizing as hell to go in knowing that no matter which way you vote, you're almost certainly going to get the same outcome regardless of what happens. So I think it would help a lot of people's engagement to begin with. Like just people coming out if they thought, well, my vote actually does have some impact on the parliament that's in front of us. I think the biggest argument against PR most of the time ends up being, well, no, but the point is that when we get majorities of parties and all of that kind of stuff, we actually tend to get more stuff done than you do with grand coalitions.
That's
where
true.
if any wheel falls off, there'll be giant problems. So insofar as I think it's just in terms of being a system, I just think often it's quite impractical. Where I would come from on PR is, say, you keep the Commons as they are, the House of Commons. So we've got two houses, like the Senate and House of Representatives in the US.
Yeah.
The House of Commons is traditionally much more powerful. It's the one that sets up the legislature. Then that gets passed up to the House of Lords, who have the right to send it back to the Commons and go, no, you need to discuss this again. And there is chicanery where the Commons can get around the Lords, but usually
that's
that's
very much like
happens,
ours.
right?
Yeah, that's very much like our House of Representatives and Senate.
So our lords aren't elected in any real meaningful way. They're appointed by the major political parties when they're in power, and some people have hereditary positions, and the church has some positions. I don't know why, but they do.
That's a point I want to. I wasn't going to mention it, but since you brought up, I can't resist. I actually had a bit of a Facebook rant with a couple people about this the other day, and it started off with me saying, how come I think it's 5 positions that are dedicated to cardinals of the church? Why did they, no matter how good the person is, no matter if Christianity numbers go down to less than 1%, no matter what happens, they are going to get those seats and represent people. Even if the person that takes the seat has no idea of politics, even if they're comatose, even if they're 7 years old, whatever, those seats are dedicated. How is that possibly ever fair? And I tried to encourage some discussion on that point, but pretty much all of the people that discussed it with me said, why do we even have a Ministry of Lords anyway? Why does that even exist in the first place, House of Lords? And I actually kind of agree. I mean, to be honest, I don't see why we have a system of people that we don't vote for taking control of the country.
See, the difference here is in the U.S., the Senate is still voted for. And so we don't have any that are appointed. We vote for both the House and the Senate. And so those still come from the people. So that's our one big difference from how yours is set up.
So I think with our system, the justification at least is it makes sense to appoint certain people to the Lords. So for example, it would be a good idea to appoint really prominent scientists to the Lords. Because there might be scientific issues that the Commons doesn't have the ability to discuss, but a Lord might, and might be able to advise the Commons on passing that kind of issue and send it back, for example. And so that's where the Lord's discussion is valuable. I don't think it's as valuable as having, an actual representative system in general.
If you also see the link in the IRC, this is something I've been believing in for a long time now. Scientocracy. It's the belief, along with a technocracy, it's the belief that a system of government can be based on people who are actually smart, not just good speakers. So
you say that until you get the ultimate scientists that basically their whole goal is to forward scientific thinking at the expense of people's rights and people's freedoms and ability to make bad decisions.
If you get, again, we're going down a rabbit hole here. If you get
Age
the
of Ultron,
person on
that's all I
Earth,
can say. The usual thing of cleansing the humanity. So you need a little bit of both sides.
If you can get some, say a supercomputer in charge of the country, just saying, imagine you could, and it put out maximum amount of happiness overall by the country.
For who?
For the country overall, by total.
Based on what?
Every day. Somebody selects on a meter 1 to 10 happiness, and if it's too low, the computer will make decisions which changes the happiness.
Okay, yeah. So theoretically, it creates a world which is as happy as it could be,
and horrible to live in.
It probably would, because if you imagine it this way, imagine I am a person that gets massive happiness out of literally nothing. So the computer assigns me literally nothing for the rest of the time, right? And then you've got, Paris Hilton, who is only happy if she's getting like millions of pounds a day in like perfume products or something. And then she gets millions of pounds because she's incredibly like more difficult to please or something like that. Then that leads to some sort of mad society.
Has anybody watched Wall-E? Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you have nothing but a bunch of people sitting in big gravity chairs watching crap fed to them all day, and they're just blissfully ignorant and therefore happy. Because the challenge is, without negativity in the world, there's nothing to judge, good. And so,
of course. Let me reel in the extreme example. Let me reel that back into a probably realistic one.
Yes,
Say
and at some point we got to take a
charge.
break here, come back, and actually talk about some tech news today. So I'll give you one more, Ken.
I'll be very quick. Okay, let's just say that we did elect scientific figures as opposed to politicians, right, to control our country. And yes, research would take a number one stance, and so would education. And I would argue that is the best thing we could possibly do, because nothing fights off world hunger, disease, pain, suffering, human rights, anything other than the advance of technology. That's the best way we could possibly solve all our issues. If we can make it so that we can duplicate rice, we can make massive amounts of energy and food out of minimal amounts of products and so on and so forth, surely that's the best thing we can do for the humankind.
You say that, but you have to get past people's desire to be wealthy for anything to ever work like that, for people to not want power or wealth. Because you can't feed the world when every warlord in a third world country steals all the food that comes into the country and holds it against their people. You can't, just because technology makes everything so we have excess of what we need to survive, doesn't mean it's going to keep people from screwing up the equation, regardless of who's in charge of the world.
Have you ever read the Culture series of books?
I have not.
I highly recommend. It's a futuristic sci-fi universe in which the majority, something like 80% of the universe, is being populated by the Culture, who is just basically a perfect race of people who have perfect machinery and they have perfect amounts of food. If they want more land, if they want more power, they're given a planet and they get terraformed and they get to wherever their specifications are. You can do as you wish, and people become professors, because all you can really do nowadays is teach. Otherwise, you just laze about, go running, etc., wherever you feel like, and it's like a utopia. Or if you are the kind of person who wants more adventure, you can go to the non-80% of the universe where there are races that are not quite up there yet, and you can go into their strange world of non-perfection. Anyway, it's really interesting because it's pretty much the kind of thing I'm kind of wanting us to do one day, is have this perfect society where we can have, I don't know, like you have a personal device on you that's attached to your wrist that can tell if you're in danger, and or if you're falling off a cliff, and a drone will come and save you. Or why? That's that would be my ideal kind of world, is one that's just like a utopia like that.
Again, so kill all people, let nature get back on track, and you can maybe have something close to a utopia. Never gonna happen.
Okay, that's all for me. That's all for me.
To bring it back to the discussion on the commons stuff, and proportional representation, I think that's where it was.
Yep.
I think possibly my favorite system is one where the House of Commons is still done first past the post, same as it ever was, because like you should have MPs represent people, and people should be able to vote for an individual MP, and that can lead to flaws, whatever. But the House of Lords should be proportionally represented. So if the Commons does anything that is massively against what the country actually wants, the House of Lords then has, the actual proportional representation of what the country looks like to then object to it. It might lead to summer policy, but I think that's probably the best way of reconciling both those two things.
I would agree.
Yeah, and having some level of experience in the Lords still.
So that's a very wise opinion on it, actually. I hadn't even thought of that. That's a really good idea.
So there you go. That's my opinion on proportional representation.
Natural 20 for Prime Minister.
All right. So with that close of us talking about UK politics this week, which is not a bad thing, is actually quite good. As Ken's holding up, saying, "Wait, I've got more."
After the break, I want to talk SNP after the break. Just a little bit.
You're killing me, Ken. Killing me. All right. So we'll let you have one more word after the break, but we are going to take a break. And we are going to listen to, as actually was talked about slightly earlier, and because I've been playing it as well, we're going to listen to a little OC remix of a Mortal Kombat song called
Nice.
Duel Dragons. And then with that, we'll be right back, and we will continue our discussion with Nat 20. I'm just moving things around in the stream so we have everything where it needs to be. All right, you're listening to Show X on VtWProductions.com, and we'll be right back after this.
Versus the World Production would like to thank JetBit Software for the use of RSS Feed Creator. This show has its RSS feed created and maintained by RSS Feed Creator, with its easy-to-understand interface and ability to upload all with a simple click. You can't make it any easier. Try out all their awesome software at www.jitbit.com or see the link on our front page at VtWProductions.com.
Send in your emails to showx at VtWProductions.com. You're listening to Show X on VtWProductions.com.
Hey everybody, and we're back! And before I let Ken steal things back, I want to give a little bit of announcement of an upcoming show. Still no date set, but I did want to give out some details about a friend of mine who is going to be on the show because he has released his first book. He is actually a published author now, and so he has a book called The Sword of Dragons, and it's by my friend John Wasik. And
really
if
cool.
anybody is interested, you can go check it out today. If you have a Kindle, you can order it straight away. I think it's going for $2.99, I think, on Kindle. on ebook, and then on Barnes & Noble, Nook. Essentially, if you're to buy the book itself, it's going for, I want to say it was like $13 or $14. But it's available, and I have links in the show notes, so anybody will be able to go check it out. $13.99 in paperback. Available from barnesandnoble.com. It's called The Sword of Dragons. And it's, so far, I've just gotten into the book. I've just started reading it myself, and I'm quite enjoying it. But we are looking to have him on the show in an upcoming episode to talk about what it's like to be a self-published author. So look forward to that. And it's great, because it's fantasy. It's swords and dragons and magic. So much for our community. Anyhow, back into things, and Ken was trying to talk a little bit more about, what was this, S&P?
Yes, so let's do a bit more politics. One of the many things you're not supposed to do on the show, which we decided to do. Can you guys hear me okay? I feel it.
No, I keep hearing the Scottish kind of accent thing, and it's getting in the way of me understanding what's coming through.
Very good, very good. Okay, this just sounds a little bit strange to me. I don't know if I've knocked something. Yes, so SNP is the Scottish Nationalist Party, and what they do and what their main goal is to have Scotland govern itself, or at least to devolve more powers to the Scottish government, so that we can control more things without the British actual controlling all the things we do, or as many people in Scotland see it as, English controlling what the Scots do. So it's interesting how to approach this. The first thing I think I should probably tackle, since a lot of our audience is American, is don't let your emotion cloud your vision here. Yes, freedom. Yes, Braveheart. Yes, all those things, fantastic in the past when we were ruled by tyrannical leaders versus peaceful ones. Bit of a difference. And plus, it's not as if we're being led by the English. Britain includes Scotland. We are being led by ourselves as well as others. For God's sakes, half of the, well, not even half, not really half, but we've had a whole bunch of Scottish prime ministers in the past, couple decades, never mind in the past 100 years. So remove your emotion, think logically about this, and don't try and let the pride of ages past cloud your vision. It's very easy with old conflicts to come back to light in common day, which is a ridiculous thing in any country, never mind one that we like to think is so advanced as the West. So with that out the way, I wish I could say it to the Scottish populace. A lot of people, I believe... Now, I'm not saying the majority of Scottish voters believe this, or even the majority of SNP voters, but there are definitely
just
some
your
people...
parents. Yeah.
Especially young voters who see it with lack of logic and more with an emotion and a pride. And it's unnecessary. I think we should have pride in our
young
country.
Voters. It sounded like a majority of voters were based on emotion when that came up.
Oh, it depends which part you're talking about. If you're talking about the referendum, we had a 45% minority of people vote for independence and 55% voted for no independence. I voted in the majority, 55%. I said no thank you to independence. I'm quite happy to be under British rule and be a British person myself. I didn't want my passport to change and say what I am. I didn't want my wife to be shipped out of the country because she's got a British visa, not a Scottish one. And I wanted to continue being employed at the time by my company who worked on contracts for British contracts, let's say. So, as such, it was very important for me personally, as well as what I believed in the whole run of things. I eventually think one day, in hundreds of years' time, we will have a global government. I think uniting together is a very important thing on a personal level. So that is why I think we're a human race running together. I think geographical boundaries are a silly thing that we have made up. And yes, I think we should also have, much like the US has done with a federal overall government, then each state should have their own rules. I'm totally for Scottish government, and I'm actually for the Scottish government having more power. However, I think human rights should be a global thing, not just a British thing. I think human rights should be for every single human on Earth, never mind just some. Anyway,
no government cares about human rights. Come on, that's like you have a lot of utopia talk going on today, Ken.
I'm an idealist, and I think we should always aim for that. I think we should always aim for idealist values.
You keep forgetting that you're talking about people. God,
people are weird, and they do odd things that don't make any sense.
People are selfish.
So, just as a sort of personal, you guys know, I did vote no, so my vision against SNP is a little bit clouded. So that being said, that was the referendum. We now had the British vote for government, and in Scotland, I think it was 56 seats out of 59 available within Scotland were voted SNP. So that is by far a majority. That's over over 90% in a way. That's pretty crazy. That's in fact, over 95%, I think, even. That is an insane majority of people want SNP to be in Parliament in England. Now, that does not mean those people want independence. That means they want SNP because they are a good party, they do have good values. It does not necessarily mean independence. So in that side of things, I don't have a problem with people voting SNP. Great for them. They do have a lot of good policies. I've heard multiple English people say to me, "I wish I could vote for SNP in England." Not saying that all English people think that either, because they obviously it's a Scottish nationalist party, and I don't think there is a majority of people in England or anywhere near there thinking that. But they do have a lot of good values. They're led by a very prominent person, a very well-spoken leader, Nicola Sturgeon, who is doing really well for herself. And I gotta say, she is a very intelligent woman and a very well-spoken one. And I think she's a great pick for leading that party. But if I had to vote, and I gotta say, I did not vote mainly because of location things. You can see I'm not in the usual place anymore. I have moved town, and this whole thing started kind of unexpectedly in the past few weeks, moving so abruptly. So I just simply wasn't in the right place to vote. I was registered to vote and I was prepared to vote, but I didn't. So many people would say I don't have a right to talk about it. I'd say that's stupid. I can talk all I want. I can't I can't flag and say I'm doing something about it. But I would argue that the spoken word is just as powerful as a vote.
The way I say about it is, and it has been discussed. Someone else saying, "Well, you could have mailed in a vote," but
I was too late to register. I tried that. I was too late.
Okay. Bill, because the way I say about anything when it comes to politics and voting is, if you do not participate in the process, then you have no right to bitch and moan about the results of the process. True. That's how I say it. Yes, you can talk that you would like things to be a certain way, and you talk policies that you appreciate and things like that, but you cannot complain about the people who are voted in and the things they are doing if you yourself did not vote for one way or another to change.
You see, I disagree, because I think, for example, let's say Nicola Sturgeon, the head of SNP. I don't think she can vote. Is she allowed to vote for herself? I don't know how that works.
In the US, you can vote for yourself.
Well, I don't know if you can or can't, but regardless, I think she can do a lot. I think if she didn't vote and she went out and made tens of thousands of other people vote, I think she's allowed to bitch and moan about it, even if she didn't. My point being, I think you can, depending on your audience, depending on your charisma and how you can influence other people, I think even if you don't vote, you can influence the election more ways than you yourself.
You can influence, and I'm not saying that, but I personally think that you have no right to bitch if you did not yourself vote for or against what you're after.
Oh, I have the right. I do have the right.
Oh no, you have the right, but I think you're an arse if you do so. And I discredit that person's opinion, because if they cared so much about changing the way things are, then maybe they would participate in the process.
Fair, but in that case, I'm a self-titled arse then. I didn't vote, and I will continue to talk about it, because I think some people just can't vote for certain reasons, whether it be in prison, whether you have certain mental disabilities which prevent you from voting, or whether whatever reason you can't make it to vote that time, or you choose not to. I think if you should always have the right to speak about it, and I don't think you should ever be prevented that right.
No, you have the right to speak about it. I just discredit you.
Okay, that's different. Having the right and being discredited is completely different. Feel free to discredit me. That's fine. I have the right to do it, though. Anyway, so SNP in general, people are often voting for them because they're very much pro-independence. However, many people vote them for their policies, and other people didn't vote for them. So we used to have Labour and Conservative pretty well joint back in the day, decades ago in Scotland. My grandparents, in fact, were, the tradition was back in the day, they were farmers, and the guy who owns the farm would say to them, "You're voting Conservative." And so ever since, my grandparents have been voting Conservative. They are indefinitely a minority now, because my Conservative are very much not welcome in Scotland and haven't been for a couple of decades. We've always been opposed to the normal vote of Britain, which is particularly interesting because that's a big fight for independence. Our whole country tends to vote the other direction. So why are we governed by these people? So I can understand the whole thing, but personally, again, I believe in working together in unity and all that, and having our own devolved government. So the SNP in general have done really well, and the quick summation of it is basically they have more power and more say in the British Parliament than they did previously. However, compared to something like 500 seats other than them, the 50-something they hold mean nothing in a long term, and so they're not exactly about to stand up and declare independence and get it. However, they do have more say in any issues relating to Scotland and not relating to Scotland. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is for us to find out. But I think it's definitely very interesting election to see what's going on, to see who got voted in, and to see Scotland especially vote all sort of orangey yellow in almost entirely, but 3 seats. That is a crazy turn of events, and I don't think anybody would have seen anything else happen actually this year, considering how much independence talk's been going on in the past few years.
I think the independence thing in Scotland is actually really interesting. We'll get back on the tech stuff in a second, but like my 2 cents on it is the referendum itself detoxified the SNP. So a lot of the time before, when you were voting for the SNP, you were voting for a nationalist, free Scotland that's separate from the UK. Now, after the referendum, the SNP just went, no, we're not campaigning on that anymore. The referendum's happened, we lost, we aren't going to discuss this. It's not part of our policy. So I think a lot of Scottish voters felt a lot more comfortable voting for them because they weren't necessarily voting for leaving the UK as a whole. And I think I did very well by them. I think that illustrated that a lot of Scottish people agree with their policies in general about, how you should spend money, all of that kind of stuff. And honestly, I don't think it's that bad to see the SNP pick up as many seats as they have. I think it's just a good way of expressing a difference in opinion that exists in Scotland. I know a lot of northern friends of mine basically just go, we wish the SNP were here because the north of England tends to vote very, very similar to the Scots in Scotland.
That's interesting you mentioned that. I actually put on Facebook today, and I'll share it right now, a link to change.org, allow the north of England to secede from the UK and join Scotland. It's got 5,396 supporters, which is pretty crazy. So that would include Blackpool, Liverpool, Leeds, Preston, Sheffield, and Hull, and Middlesbrough, and so on, all the way up there. So that's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. I don't know whether that's how serious that is, because I actually thought it was kind of a minority thing. But now that you're discussing, I didn't actually know the north of England had those kind of views. So that's really interesting.
You will notice the north of England almost always just votes Labour. Like, is incredibly left-wing compared to the south, especially. So I can see that being something that they might want, given the SNP tend to campaign on very similar lines to northern Labour MPs. So yeah, there you go.
That's really interesting.
So that's my 2 cents on the SNP and the election as a whole.
All right, Mr. Wayne, anything else on the SNP topic, independence topic, while we're here?
Honestly, that is something for all of you to discuss, because it affects me in no way at all. But it is interesting to hear the discussion, very much so, and the motivations behind it. And the one thing I will throw out there, another general thing about politics for me, is that I have trouble whenever I hear people discuss parties as just like one being good and one being bad kind of thing. Yeah. Because as I said kind of at the top of the discussion, I don't think there's any one group that fully encompasses what's probably the best for a country. That some of them have some great ideas and they can be on either side of whatever issue, but as a whole, they all have their own ideas.
Yep. I totally understand why parties exist, but I can also see why independents are so lucrative, because they truly actually can stand for their own personal values, whereas anybody in a party is forced into those specific... You have
little boxes you have to check to be in certain parties, right?
Yeah.
There's certain ways you have to represent in order to be considered part of that party. And so in that similar vein, I challenge people to not get, as you were saying, Ken, not get emotional about politics, which is difficult. And if nothing else, but to really look at what specific issues that any group is advertising or anyone you're voting for is supposedly going for. Because that's unfortunately the best you can do in a representative kind of government is, try to get the best, closest representative to your kind of viewpoints. And if there are specific issues, to really have to be able to understand what it is their views on those issues are that are the most important to you. And that's the easiest way to choose kind of what way you'll lean in any political system.
That's true.
Because I truly believe I'm as close to an independent as you could be considered, because I have views on both sides of issues here in the United States. It just depends on the issue. I'm very conservative about some things, very liberal about
most
others.
the same. I've yet to meet somebody who is pure right wing or pure left. Oh, actually, I have met.
I was gonna say, you say that,
pure
Ken.
left-wing.
I know some scary people, so yeah, I've met some that are very one-sided either direction, and it scares me to no end.
And one final piece on the whole thing, I promise is final. I actually didn't mention what I wanted to vote for, and who I would have voted for. I would have actually voted Green Party, because they're the only party. Well, actually, they're the best party for someone.
Because
I hate to ever say. I feel bad for ever saying that I'm in a section of people who are discriminated against, because I'm a white male in my 20s in the tech industry. So I'm pretty much the least discriminated. But then I would tell people I'm an atheist. And in that sense, I think is one of the most discriminated religious groups in the West, I would argue. And the Green Party have some of the best pro-marriage, being able to become like any kind of council member and stuff. There's some strange laws in Britain as well as in the US that say if you're an atheist, you can't do certain things in the land, which is ridiculous to me. I don't think your religious rights should change anything in government.
We don't really have those.
And Green Party
didn't
backed me completely
know
with
about
that, and this was something I was really interested in.
I had no idea those laws existed at all.
Well, I'll see if I can find some.
Let's say in the U.S., we don't have any kind of laws that state you have to be any kind of religious affiliation to do anything in government. What we do have is a popular opinion that you could not vote in an atheist or a whatever kind of president that is not of a Christian belief system, mostly because the majority of this country has Christian beliefs, and they're
Isn't also
strongly
mayors and
motivated by
stuff.
that.
I'm sure there's actual like laws. No, I'm certain.
Not in the U.S. Because we're very big about the separation of church and state.
I will tell you you're wrong in a second. Give me a second. I have definitely seen this. I'm sure I saw it somewhere, but I'll get back to you on that. Anyway, in the meantime, let's continue on. Oh, wait. Unelectable atheists. Yeah, here it is. Oh, come on.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it. Come on.
Okay, this here is. There is an original. Obviously, these laws are trumped by the No Religious Test Clause of the United States Constitution, which found in Article 4, Paragraph 3, that states that the senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of several state legislatures, and all executive judicial officers, both of the United States and the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. But no religious. Oh no, it does say the otherwise. Damn it. I'm sure there's somewhere I found it.
Wait, are you finding things that actually are supporting
Here it
mine? My stating? Is that what I just heard?
Here
Ken?
it is. Arkansas has a specific. Yes, specific states have their own thing. That's what it is. Arkansas, Article 19, Section 1 says no person who denies the being of God shall hold any office in the civil departments of the state, nor be competent to testify as a witness in any court. Maryland also says that no religious test ought to ever be required as a qualification, so they've got the opposite again, which is good.
So you found one state that has a law
Mississippi, no person who denies the existence of a supreme being shall hold any office in the state.
about it. Okay, Mississippi, so the South, essentially.
No,
Yeah.
North Carolina, the following persons shall be disqualified for office. Any person who shall deny the being of Almighty God. So on.
Wow.
Texas,
So again,
South Carolina,
so you have
Tennessee.
individual states who try to put up their thing, but again, it is trumped by national law.
Sure, but if you can't hold council in your own state,
Well, but no, the national law means if someone were to go against that, like if a prominent atheist were to fight against it, they would be supported by the country's law, not a
all right,
state's.
but so they'd have to fight for it anyway. They wouldn't.
They
be,
would.
They wouldn't be
in
given
that
office.
state, they'd have to fight to show that they were being unconstitutional, which is what we
Point
base
being-
our
Yeah.
entire system
Sure, but
on.
point being, you're gonna have to. They'd have to fight for it. They would have more things in their way to hold office than any other religious group, and that is something that is worrying. I don't think there should be any laws.
Well, you say
prohibiting or
atheist,
making it
but
more
that's
difficult for
any
atheists than
religious
anything
group that did not believe in a singular god. And so, like Buddhists and
Fair.
Hinduists and
Yeah,
things like
actually,
that,
that's true.
there's a lot of other groups, not just atheists, that would fall under that clause.
That's true. That's true.
So, anyhow, all right. We will continue on now to talk about things not quite so politicking, if you will. Now, I do appreciate, because this is something that is current events for what's been going on in the UK. So, absolutely appropriate topic to get into. But what we will jump into is trying to talk at least a little bit about.
Technology, news, and more today on the Geekoscope.
And I say this because I was struggling with Ken before we were on the show, where I have so many articles that have been like just packing up in our document for things I've been wanting to talk about. And it feels like I will never catch up with them. And I have to keep deleting ones off that are no longer relevant because of how far they've gone before we talked. So one that I wanted to bring up right away, just for here in the U.S., one of the carriers that we've had this huge problem with, because this is a personal thing on me, is that one of our local cell phone carriers, AT&T, has recently changed their rules a little bit on data usage. And I see this as a good thing. It says, and this comes from Ars Technica, saying AT&T has finally ramped down its throttling of unlimited LTE customers. And so someone like me who has a legacy unlimited account, essentially, I can use unlimited amounts of data. And I ran into it last month when I was using and sending off a shared Google document to show some of the rough cuts of the Serenity video I was in. Not realizing at the time that it wasn't YouTube, so it wasn't like it was scaling it down for me. This was kind of the raw, uncut video in MP4, and so it kept downloading like 3 or 4 gigs of data to my phone every time I hit play. And so last month I hit somewhere in the range of 11 gigs on my plan. Now it's unlimited, but AT&T previous to this change had a rule that if you hit over 5 gigs of data usage, they would throttle you down to, and this is where when I posted on my Facebook, basically under 0.5 megabit up and down. So essentially dial-up speeds. You know, what is that, 500K or less. And in doing so, I was suffering to the point where I could barely even use like navigation on the phone or anything like that. Well, in this new one, they've changed the specifics in the law just slightly in the way their user agreement states, where it used to say that customers on a 3G or 4G smartphone with an unlimited data plan who have exceeded 3 gigs of data during a period would experience reduced speeds, and customers at 4G LTE that exceeded 5 gigs, same kind of thing. Now what they've said is they will only reduce customers' usage speeds when they've reached a point if they are on a congested network. So it's a subtle difference, but it basically is stating that only if the area they're in is getting overly used.
But that means that the ISP can, or the provider can actually intentionally limit the amount of hardware they put into the area, and then limit everybody if they want to.
So it's not going to change because there's still discussion about what it means to be, but what it means is they can't target a specific person and say, oh, you're using too much, so now we're going to move you down to not using any data.
Yeah, just a group of people.
But here's the difference, right? If they do it so badly to an entire group, the entire group is going to complain. At which point there's actually a voice. Because when one person gets targeted, and you're like, what are you talking about? I have unlimited. Then you have almost no recourse. And so when a whole group gets affected, then you have a lot of voice and stuff. So regardless of it, what it means now is I may still get throttled, but it's not going to be down to the levels of unusable as punishment. It's just going to be down to a more like viable, okay, we're just making the network more even for everyone. That I'm cool with.
It seems that just from how I assume network hierarchy works, once you go over a certain limit, you might be in any place. You could be anywhere in the country and have gone over that limit, and then you'll just get randomly throttled because you're personally over the limit. It doesn't seem like that is something that would be caused by network conditions or anything like that. So I don't think that they're like saying we'll only throttle it during network conditions actually affects anything, because they're still going to have the same network architecture that they've always had around the country. It's not going to be any different than it was before. And given they can't predict where the most people are going to be using data, or at least they can't predict when an individual would go over the amount of data they would want, it doesn't seem like it will be any different to the way it is now, other than you just don't get randomly throttled above 5 gig. I mean, I don't know about that because in the UK I've got 6 gig, and then they just charge us tons of money afterwards.
Yep.
So yeah.
Well, so that's the way normally the plans are set now. The way it is this only affects those few of us that still have plans that were officially unlimited data plans from back in the day. Because the key is these companies, for the most part, no longer offer unlimited data. And so instead they have
really.
it like...
I don't know why.
Because...
I mean, okay, technologically here, I actually don't know. Like, is there I assume that there's hardware out there that can only send out and receive so much data, right? So be it giant telephone poles, be the 3G, 4G transmitters
There are
and receivers.
overall
I assume there's only a
bandwidth
certain amount that they can send and
limitations.
receive at once.
Yeah, there's bandwidth
Right?
limitations as a whole. Yes, you can only have
Okay,
so fat
so-
of a pipe.
That means only per second. But why did
Yep.
we have individual limits? I think it would make more sense to limit the whole, but say, hey, everybody has infinite data, just it might come slower if people use it all at once. That would be fairer. Why don't we do that? I mean, why aren't they using their hardware to their limits?
Here's the reason. Companies are not here for the greater good of the world. Companies are only there to make profit for for those
stupid.
who own the company. I say that specifically whenever a company goes public. This is Wayne's political politicking piece. If a company goes IPO to the point where there are shares to be held and profit to be made per shareholder, they now lose their soul and no longer do the right thing for the company and the people using it. They now do what they can to make money for the people who own shares. And so in doing so, they're not for the greater good of people. It's all about the money. And the whole point
But
here is they
surely-
have those limits so they can do the same thing. They can gouge you for going over a data plan or charge you more per month for the chance that you would go up to a certain level of data, which is why I have never upgraded or changed my service plan from unlimited
Yep.
back when I bought it because
I'm
I was
jealous.
hoping this would happen. And part of the reason AT&T did this is because they're currently being sued in a class action lawsuit in the FCC because of their throttling practices because they were not holding honor to what was said by unlimited data. And the idea that I should be able to use as much as I want, that's what you offered me and that's what I'm paying for. And I've had every time I buy a new phone or upgrade or do anything different, they always tell me, so you want to change to one of these other plans? You'll get faster speeds. I'm like, hell no. Because this is the only plan I can have that always will have enough data for me. And so I'm trying not to ever change. Part of the reason I'm stuck on AT&T now. But that's okay. But yeah, so that's just kind of one of those things where throwing it out there that I saw that happen. I found it interesting. And real quick,
Sure.
as a follow-up when it comes to just the old ISP thing as a whole, just kind of interesting news is that Comcast, one of the big telcos here, which is questionably good, bad, or ugly, has started offering up to 2 gigabit per second internet in Atlanta. And so for any of you that happen to be out in Georgia, just so you know, Google Fiber, basically because of what they've been doing to push the market, exactly what I predicted, when you had Google come out saying they didn't really want to be an ISP, they want everybody to have faster internet, they have targeted enough places to make all the current existing ISPs have to do, the right thing. And so because of this, after they started offering 1 gig speeds in the Atlanta area, symmetrical 1 gig, following that, Comcast has announced that they plan to bring service to 18 million homes in the U.S. by the end of 2015 for its gigabit service. And in doing so, let's see, where does it say? Comcast also revealed that it's testing the DOCSIS 3.1 profile, which is a solution that will allow for 1 gig speeds over the company's existing network, which means all the current copper without having to add new fiber or anything like that would be able to get up to 1 gig speeds, but also is offering up to 2 gigs per second. And so I'm just throwing it out there because our whole country in the US, and I'm assuming you feel the same thing in the UK, should easily all be on gigabit internet everywhere. There's no reason not to. It's artificial that we limit the bandwidth the way we do around our country when whole other countries have been doing it forever.
I think it's different in the UK slightly, actually, because a lot of the electricity stuff that we set up is still copper wire stuff.
Yeah.
So we have to undergo giant overhauls to be able to meaningfully change our internet. And in, for example, not East London where I live, but in certain outskirts of London, for example, doing so is hilariously disruptive to basically the rest of the community. Which is often why you just get terrible internet speeds around those areas because they haven't upgraded to fiber yet and can't meaningfully do so without
I think
huge
it's also
costs.
part of the reason why people are trying to push forward with what are they called? The MiFi's, Metropolis.
Yeah, the large Wi-Fi enabled networks, yeah. Because those you can plug in anywhere and not have to dig up new or bury new lines.
Which makes sense, really. Just it's the poor MS that's the only problem. But sorry to interrupt again, Nat.
No, that's completely fine. I was basically done with that because, Yeah, that is the big problem behind it in the UK. But in fairness, we're actually quite good with our providers because there's enough competition between them, and it's very easy for us to switch. So I hear, for example, in Canada, it's awful because they've only got two big internet service providers who can just basically do whatever they want, and nobody has any real choice.
Yeah, Copy. What are your thoughts on that? Hands up or thumbs up, thumbs down on Canadian internet and capability of choosing? I think we've heard some pretty specific stories over the years about that.
But yeah, I actually had the Geekoscope thingy as well. So apparently, the guys who made Banjo-Kazooie have started a Kickstarter, and they're called Platonic Games. And
this is one that Copy absolutely wanted us to also bring up, so by all means.
Wow.
I've already donated to it myself because I'm a huge fan of Banjo-Kazooie as a game. So Yorkshire Tea and I have a night every single year called Banjo-Kazooie Night.
Nice.
And surprisingly, what we do is we play through the entire game from start to finish in one night. But we add one of our own rules, which is every time. So we switch controller every time you get one of the big collectibles called a Jiggy in it. And there are 100 in the game, and so each of us plays and gets 50. And the game that we played is every time you get a Jiggy, you take a shot.
Wow. So you each are going to take 50 shots in a day.
Yeah, it is a catastrophic day, and we usually leave 2 or 3 days afterwards to recover.
Well, if you're ever in Scotland, give me a shout. That sounds like amazing fun, especially considering how bad I am at it. So,
yeah, it gets worse, obviously, because the game gets harder, and we get more and more out of it as time goes on. So the final boss is always quite difficult for us.
This sounds something that the next time you have this scheduled, we need to host this as a VTW 24-hour Twitch stream kind of event.
Yeah.
To watch you guys play and perhaps raise
fun.
funds for something with it as people can support your drunkenness.
But both you would have microphones attached, so whatever you say is always captured, no matter whether you're on top of the toilet or whether you're.
Well, to say beyond that, I would want to make the means, and I'm already trying to organize it when it hasn't happened yet. But to say it needs to have an addition, the ability for people to pay for additional shots. Like if they donate extra money during the stream, you have to take a shot when they donate. This could be an epic show.
I like it.
But the fun part is, so we love those games, and we actually also follow a lot of the former developers from that. And we follow them through their careers and bought the games that they've been making, because they're universally very, very fun. But what they did is, following the purchase of Rare by Microsoft, they all went their separate ways, and we never thought anything would ever get made by them as a team again, even if individually they contribute to certain areas. But now they've managed to all get back together to make a new game called Yooka-Laylee. It's a game, so Ken's giving me this weird look, being like, what is this Yooka-Laylee thing? So it's basically just a hilariously terrible English pun, where one character is called Uke and the other one's called Laylee, and it's like Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, exactly.
So they've got a Kickstarter for it, and last I recall, it was 850% funded, and got funded.
It's made it, and then some. Because it's at 1.4 million quid. And it has 37 days to go.
It is incredible.
Yeah, it had a pledged goal of £175,000 for it to actually be made, and they're at 1.4 million.
And I'm part of that 1.4 million?
What are they going to do with that money? What are they going to do?
Make a game, obviously.
Yeah, but they didn't need that much. They've literally got over, what's that, 1,200%? I mean, that's phenomenal.
It just shows how much people missed these guys and the games that they were making, to be honest. Yeah. But in fairness, what they did is, once they hit their initial full stretch funding thing, they then said, all right, here are 2 more things that we can do. and we will do. But otherwise, if you give us money, we're just using it for minor gameplay enhancements. So don't feel obligated to following this point.
At this point, you're just putting money in our pocket, and
yeah, basically,
we appreciate it.
Well, they're rich now in a way.
Well, the nice thing is, I think it was originally one of the stretch goals. I'm not sure if it was one of the original goals, was to put it on all the platforms.
Yeah.
But essentially, now that they've reached everything, the platforms they have announced for it are Windows, Mac, Linux, Xbox One, PS4, and the Wii U. So cross-platform.
Wow.
Yep. And they're going to be doing a release for all the platforms at the same time because they've got the money to do it now, which is very good.
They have what? Oh, so they have added more stretch goals now because they have the one at 1.5 million, which is music at its best, a full orchestral score, and then beyond that, that's it.
Additional funding is just polishing the game. I really hope they get the orchestral score. I've heard so they've got two of the composers, obviously, from Banjo-Kazooie, and they are both incredible. If anybody listened to 20 for T, T and I would basically play them almost exclusively in our ad breaks because we love them so much. It's Grant Cope and Graham Norgate, and they're both incredible composers. So if they can get an orchestral score, I'll be happy as I can be. And so I'm really looking forward to it, and I genuinely think that usually I'm very, very wary about Kickstarter. I've only ever kickstarted like one other thing in my life, and that was a gaming orchestra thing as well, as it turns out. So I knew that would deliver basically immediately. Sure. But I think if there's any set of developers that can be trusted to actually make a good game, it's probably these guys. And what they've shown us so far looks very, very promising. And I hope it does incredibly well.
Definitely. No,
thanks for the heads up.
Yeah,
definitely. It's one of those things that, Kickstarter, because I've kickstarted a couple projects there, and some have been success, some have not, some I'm still waiting on. I argue that Planetary Annihilation was a bit of a disappointment for me. It didn't quite fit what I thought the developers were originally trying to tell us. Whereas when I kickstarted the Double Clicks album, I thought that was great. And I put money into kickstarting the whole Star Citizen thing that is going insane. So I have hopes for very, very good games come out. I love the idea of Kickstarter because it's been able to allow smaller independent companies or groups like this that have a nostalgic feel to bring things back from the dead that might otherwise have never happened. And know that they've got a targeted audience that's already looking for their product.
What else is really nice is this has absolutely no input from companies like EA, and it has no companies like Ubisoft who would take this thing that people want, and they would buy the rights to it for a very low price from the original developers, cut all the original development team, adding a bunch of crappy, good graphics, poorly made gameplay, DLC available from day one that you can buy extra, and then shove it out there. And it's great that Kickstarter allows the original companies to take that back and say, you know what, we don't need these evil overlords to control our games. Let's do it ourselves, and we'll take our time, and we'll have a big budget, and we'll just make it good and well, and we'll enjoy the experience. And it's not going to be a whipping thing or a stick thing versus the carrot. It's great.
Yeah, so regarding that, one of my big concerns right now is Battlefront 3, which EA are putting out in December of this year. And it looks like they might have done a job like that on an absolutely beloved Star Wars franchise. So they recently just said, oh yeah, there aren't going to be any space battles in Battlefront. And we're like, but that's one of the core things about the game. Yep. How have you removed it? And so right now it's looking like a game that's going to be just Battlefield 5 skinned in Star Wars fashion. And I mean, I don't object to that. It's not the most terrible thing I've heard in my life. It's not going to ruin my day, but it's kind of sad.
Well, you always want more,
that was that interesting.
Right?
Yeah,
you want because arguably Battlefront 2 was one of these games that it just was really, really iconic in the fact that they were able to blend all these different types of gameplay into that really captured a lot of the universe and that feel of Star Wars in a way better than so many other things that have come out. And so just seeing the fidelity of what this engine they're doing with it gave us a lot of hope. And I still have it because I have to give credit that I think that Disney, as functional managers for the Star Wars franchise as a whole, is doing good things and is overall trying to build the IP back from the negativity that has happened over the last several years in the last 3 movies.
I agree.
So we'll see what happens, but I'm hoping they will still produce a product that is amazing. And maybe what we'll see from this is, heaven forbid, a full updated X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter in the future, or something like that, which I think a lot of people would say would be kind of one of those pinnacle Renaissance type, yes, we want that to happen so badly, but who knows. No, I still have hope for Battlefront.
Like,
I don't.
I have hope. I don't think that the worst option, the most pessimistic option is terrible, as I said. I don't think it's that bad. I would still consider buying it if it was still very well done, but I probably wouldn't be very excited. I am hoping, though, I do share the same hopes about Disney's control of Star Wars changing the way that people perceive the franchise and changing the way that the franchise is marketed. One of the games I'd like to see come out again is something like Rogue Squadron, maybe. So Rogue Squadron 2, for example, is one of my favorite games from the early GameCube era. And to me, like, flying in Endor, at the Battle of Endor, is an iconic scene for me, just because there are swarms of TIE fighters who are desperately trying to survive, and that game truly captured what it was to be like it was in the movies. And so I'd like to see something like that come out, and I really, really hope Disney can do good things for the franchise. Certainly, I have a lot of hope for the movies right now. The trailers have looked spectacular.
Yes.
I was stunned when I saw the latest Star Wars trailer. I was skeptical to begin with for a long time. I was skeptical of like the teaser as well, but that really solidified it. And then I got to see it in IMAX when I went to watch the Avengers as well. So to say it looks amazing like that is an understatement, certainly.
I agree. The movies look absolutely phenomenal. They're going to be good. I don't have any doubt. Just the amount of sheer money behind it. They can't risk it being bad.
I hope.
Else.
I have hope, and a lot of that hope is based on what I have enjoyed from the entire Marvel franchise and what Disney's been doing with that. That's what probably fuels my hope for Star Wars more than anything. Is currently I have not seen anything I have not liked come out of Marvel, and so I'm hoping that they're putting that same treatment on the Star Wars line.
Fair, but I'm trying to find right now about Battlefront, however. I don't have such high hopes for Battlefront. I put a tweet up some time ago, I'm trying to scroll through, about why I'm worried about Battlefront. But basically, I gotta say, the amount of... Here it is. Okay. The original Battlefront had 33 total planets, 33 maps with 16 planets and 4 DLC maps. The new one has come with 8 total, 4 planets. Previously, we had 32 players on all modes, now it's down to 20. Before there were space battles, now there's none. Before it was moddable, now it's not. There was a campaign before, now there's not. Galactic Conquest before, now there's not. Instant action before, now there's not. AI players before, nope, only in one game mode now, not throughout anymore. Previously, there was one pack with 4 maps and 2 new heroes for $5. Now there's 5 planned DLC already, and the game's not even released.
Oh,
5.
God, DLC needs to stop.
How bad is that? I mean, come on. DLC is supposed to be an after effect. If you've already got a plan, put it in the freaking game.
Blame it on...
Come on.
Blame it on Call of Duty and everything else that's been pushing so hard for everyone to say, you know, oh, DLC is where it's at, because now you can sell a game for 3 times its original cost. Yep. Do less initial development and just get more money out of it.
Yep. I'll go on a little bit more. In the previous game, there was 37 controllable vehicles plus 15 controllable turrets. Now there's none that have been confirmed that are playable, and it is confirmed that AT&T's will 8 AT-ATs, right, will not be playable, even though 5 have been seen in trailers. What? 15 51 playable infantry types consisting of 6 standard classes per faction, and there's 24 in total, plus 8 unique faction classes and 19 playable hero units originally. Now there's loadouts only and 2 heroes. I mean, come on. Come on.
Okay, that's pretty bad.
Yeah,
Right.
they've scaled things down quite a bit. That's unfortunate.
There we go.
Whereas
Sorry
we're
to
getting
wreck
all
it
the
already for you, but there's a reason that I'm not looking forward to this. I will not be buying this.
Well, so it's like anything. Will I pre-order? God, no. I'm so against the pre-order thing. Let things come out and find out if they're actually good before you spend your money. With that in mind, I do have to qualify that I'm going to give a lot of thanks out to people who bought me gifts on Steam over my birthday. I ended up with the new Mortal Kombat that I've now
I didn't even buy you anything, and I
put a
said I
little
would.
bit
God
into.
damn it.
Yeah.
And in fact, my mother, that's how she bought my birthday present for me, was via Steam. But I also got a pre-sale copy of the new Black Ops 3 that's coming out from my friends who are very good fans of that series. And I will at least give them, because they need their due, that Treyarch, the company that is doing Black Ops 3, has done all the Black Ops, and is arguably the only one of the Call of Duty series developers that has stayed true to form. They're coming out with this one saying that they are focusing even more so this time on the PC. And so they are very specifically going to include things that fans of the franchise have always been asking for, and they've done in the past, which is things like dedicated servers, strictly for the actual Black Ops experience. They're also kind of pushing it up to a kind of new multiplayer class system, and they're building it around some of the specific things that allow you some motion, like in Titanfall, which is one of those games that I think most people didn't pick up and play, but was a ton of fun. And we had a little resurgence of. They've also talked about overhauling the AI in the game and things like this. There's a whole list, and I bring it up because I think Pause2142 put it in the forums. If you go check out the forums under, I don't know if it's Show X or General Gaming, but in there about the next Black Ops 3 coming out, and a whole list of features that has a lot of my friends over here very excited. Normally I would say that, I'm not pre-ordering, but it was pre-ordered for me, so I just got to put that out there right away. And I will look forward to it because we keep coming back to Black Ops 2 and playing it over anything like Advanced Warfare or most of the other FPSs that have come out since. And so, hope happens, and if nothing else, I have that to look forward to. If not, the new Battlefront.
Well, sir, I gotta say, I actually forgot to send you your gift. I remember sending you like 4 different messages on Twitter, Facebook, and elsewhere, but I somehow managed to forget sending your gift, so I'm doing so right now. It should be processing and through in your account any second.
Stop it. You do not need to do that.
So
Anyhow.
enjoy.
As we get towards the top and end of the show today, I want to throw things back to Nat20 so that you can kind of let us know anything that you do have in the works in the near future. I know you teased us at the top of the show talking about maybe getting some time to come back and so we can hear your lovely voice again on the airwaves more often. I know that we would be very happy to welcome you back. And so, but what things do you have going on right now, or what things would you like people to know about before we end things up here?
Honestly, right, I wish I could say I've got all of this stuff in the works. I don't. I have my job, which has taken all of my time, and with a little luck, when it gets a little bit more quiet, I can do more. I am hopefully going to be back on this show. I'd be quite happy to come back as a guest at some point in the future. And I'll certainly be more active with VtW than I have been.
That is also very much welcome.
Certainly because with a little luck in September, I am going to be a lot less busy, and I am going to be able to do more things. I already teased the idea of doing a review show. I certainly am going to do that Dungeon Keeper LP, and I am certainly going to link through on VtW or ask you guys to check it out. A couple of things I can do aside from that. I want to see how things go. If these things work out, I will definitely check out doing more things if people find me entertaining in any meaningful way. So there you go.
Sounds great. Awesome. Well, everybody, please check out Nat20, even though he may not be the most active Twitterer out there. You can check out @TheNat20, at THENAT20. You can check him out on Twitter. And definitely check out all the old episodes. In fact, I gotta find out if we still have ours posted. And as I try to collect more archives and stuff for the old ONH days, or the old WoW Radio days, essentially, of, basically 24T and everything like that. Is such good times.
Well, you can find them on iTunes, and here is a link in the chat for anybody interested. So there are all of the old shows back in iTunes, all 101 of them.
Yes, we got over to 101. I think that was a good number.
Oh, yes, definitely.
And there should at some point on iTunes also be the hilariously outdated World of Warcraft Theorycraft show I did before I even came to the station.
Outstanding. Yes.
We can't endorse that. That's not on the station. We can't endorse that.
Shush. Like I said, I'm doing my
Spoil our
archive
radio.
project, so you can have it all. Anyhow, that is all the time we have for today. So, Ken, could you wrap us up so we can change over the channels and give it all back to all the other shows that are coming out today? With a note, everybody check out the new episode of Tales of Relevant Thought tonight that Tom in the IRC is making sure everybody knows about. So go check that out. All right, Ken, wrap us up.
All right. First of all, thank you very much, Mr. Natural 20, for joining us on the show. It's been great fun having you here, and you're always welcome back. And I certainly look forward to any efforts you put into your video side of things or anything else you may do in the future with the station. We would love to have you back for those things. All right. Check us out on twitter.com/DocDead, twitter.com/thenat20, twitter.com/GoHex, and twitter.com/VtW for the four of us, being Wayne, the Nat, the me, and the show. Check us out by sending emails to showx@VtWProductions.com. Tell us how your geek cred's going for the week. Check us out on patreon.com. Forget Kickstarter, you can give money monthly. Isn't that better? Wait, is it? Well, you can give $1 a month and we'd appreciate that. Patreon.com/showx. You can find us there. Check us out on Facebook.com. Type in Showx there and you'll find us as well. Easy peasy. And check out all the shows on the station. There are many of them to enjoy. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for being on the show, and thanks for having me as well, Mr. Wayne.
All right, everybody, and with that, we will catch you again next week. Have a good week, everyone. Bye.
Goodbye. See you next zombie. Good night. I forgot.